Okay, I'm just going to give you a short little introduction. Welcome to ARI, a discussion forum on the exchange, experimentation and ideas for artist-run initiatives. My name is Meenakshi May. I'm one of the co-directors of Paper Mountain and your MC for today. Lucky you. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. This discussion forum happens alongside Keep Running, which is the exhibition we have at Paper Mountain, which brings together work from 10 artist-run initiatives from across Australia. The exhibition opened last night and will continue until March the 29th. Please do visit the gallery and the exhibition if you haven't already. And you're welcome to join us, note this in your diaries, for the closing party and the book launch on Saturday 28th of March at Paper Mountain. Thank you all for coming down today. Thank you especially to today's speakers for agreeing to share their knowledge and time. We are always astonished and grateful at the generosity of the arts community. I'd like to thank the City of Perth and the State Government through the Department of Culture and the Arts, who has supported this project both financially and through their valuable advice, time and encouragement. Thank you also to Central Institute of Technology for providing this venue. So today we will have 3 panels, 2 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. In each, the speakers will give you some background on their personal experiences working with and alongside artist-run initiatives, and then there will be extended time for questions. We hope you will take the opportunity to ask questions and engage in discussion to make this day an opportunity to build relationships and find common ground with other creative people. So just some basic housekeeping. You can find the toilets outside the main door that you came into and the main building to the right at the back of the theatre. We will have a brief morning tea break, really brief, at 11:15, and lunch will be held across the road on the courtyard at Gallery Central off Aberdeen Street, where your pink shipping container is out front. So I'm not going to take much more of your time, but I do want to acknowledge that the attribute that keeps ARIs running, and the great thing about being part of something like Paper Mountain, is that in community it engenders. So Paper Mountain would not be here without past co-directors, Anna Dunhill, Amber Harries, Stephen Genovese, Joanna Sokolowski, Renee Coles, Julia Suddenly, Melissa McGrath and Ashley White. Thank you to all our past and present volunteers as well, studio artists and supporters. Our first panel today looks at the importance of otherwise of criticism and curating in artist-run initiatives. One of the benefits of exhibiting in ARIs that we often hear repeated is that the artist can have direct control over the presentation of work, meaning it is possible to show experimental, non-commercial or process-based art without the exclusionary power of curators, who might be swayed by an institutional bias. But of course, no artist makes work in a void. And there are many ARIs with a strong emphasis on emerging curators, writers and critical analysis. This panel will be moderated by Marcon, sitting right there. Marco needs little introduction. Since moving to Australia from Italy in 1985, he has edited the contemporary art journal Praxis M, taught at several universities, curated a number of exhibitions, published hundreds of essays and articles, and of course co-founded IASCA, now known as the International Art Space. In 2009, Marco created Spaced, an international event of socially engaged art throughout regional and rural communities in Western Australia. In 2013, he was awarded the prestigious Sydney Myer Creative Fellowship. So I will turn it over to Marco now so he can introduce the speakers for the first panel. Thank you.
moderate this panel, but yeah, it's good to be here. I think the bios, I think most of you will have the full bio, so my introduction will be short. I think I need to use Robert Cook. He's, it's redundant for a Western Australian audience. He's a writer, a curator at the ARI Western Australia of several exhibitions and did many other things. Is it Robert next in the next speaker? Are you? Yeah. Okay, because I don't have. I've already done, yes. And, I said I can speak for 12 minutes, so I have a stopwatch, and we'll see. Okay, Robert.
Yeah. Okay. Is this the thing that works? Yeah? Yeah. Title of my talk is Paper Mountain Thing 2.docx. Now you won't be able to tell, but I wrote this when I was quite worked up about a few things, and yes, it veers way the fuck off theme. It stays stranded in some family's pool, and I found it there in a moment of clarity on Thursday and thought maybe I should rewrite it, yank that Buick out of the bath. Instead of that, I figured I could redeem my downward spiral by performing it as if I'm John Ashbery, reading an early ironic work about a person giving a talk and slowly choking on mixed metaphors and adjectives. In light of this, consider my mouth making nothing more than a simple, hectoringly atmospheric intro to the day, and please feel free to talk amongst yourselves. I've never lived in a share house. I've never dealt with peer-to-peer politics, the Booker Prize-winning fictions of equality, blanketing murky jealousies, Twitcher Duna-gripping longings, amidst the unity of Rick, Neil, Vivian, and the other guy dancing to madness, railing against Alexi Sale, bad plumbing. And so never have I banded together, withered together, and pitched a thing into the wild and set a boundary around that thing by way of fostering it as a thing born of parameters, a viscous parametricality celebrated once a month for its very isness, as much as its very self-declaring criticality and its very freedom from, with beer cups and new plats and densely worded flyers slung down on car bonnets as we run at dawn and at dusk. In 1979, away from border security petrol station owners, TV crews and pebble-dash small-town critics, with their powers of description running clean in consciousness through their keyboards whilst they curate shows that sound bleed other shows. And because of these lacks, I'm full of a rare hemoglobin deficient type of ultra-forceful desire towards ARI's concept spiral, photocopied merchandising. Coming to it in the state of longing in the guise of your brutal other, much hated wage earner, with a square's false prophet personality, eating Bunnings hot dogs, paying rates, raising a family, oiling my holster, parking on whoever the fuck's lawn I like. Yes, ARI and I are pure brimming altars, self-defining therefore, critical to my and our associative makeups. And yes, of course, we are all caught in the same bind, the same dogged sluice together. And so I see you as victim of your spell, and as hapless partisan participant in the fights of becoming we use art as the engine for. In my den, as I throw a dental bone to my retriever with one hand, the other finish a catalogue raisonade for some South American surrealist printmaker, I dream luge my sordid way into your worlds. I dream luge flat structures, meetings in pubs, afternoons searching for spaces. A general glimmering, semi-sober reaching made up of your skinny arms, a will basically to connect and to seal off simultaneously, to keep a thing glimpsed only, a world entirely happy with its intentions, micro-heroines, heroes, large and small personalities, confident this is in all levels of its culture, from footfall to sail smoke. All of this being narrated, not curated, not critiqued, narrated, and sent out to the world as messages of big-hearted enthusiasm, but always and only in the code of your secret services. So just those people you've cruised at record stores have a way in, a way to join your deliberate posse. And dream luge you crafting a world's own thing of continual delicate refinement, a world that has somehow and miraculously not actually withdrawn from another world to make itself, but that has simply opened up, as if its internal cavities have always been apparent and present, as if there's always been these different lives waiting for us to be lived like go-between songs with headlands and lights pulling dresses and shirts together as sharp guitars float over drums, sweetness held in check this is by a fitful fidelity to the emotions and all they stand for, its elements of surprise, non-sameness. You knew and ever newer people moving in and out of lofts, creating a lattice like that proposed by David Eggers, an entire self-sufficient land of expression and proper conduct that makes itself, makes its effects out and shapes the world incrementally in its own image as a form of soft cultural evolution in which that act of the critical happens not out of any trend-correcting impulse, but out of an intimate creative mimicry attached to style as substance, and which, because of the longing this activates, you find yourselves dipping within a web of speaking to and speaking through via bedrooms, prayer circles, YouTube channels, variously hacked devices. This producing, and I'm fixated and I know I'm repeating myself, a swimming circle of peers who set up other stations for the occasion of dispersal and meeting of platforms of guardianship, where the communicating about a language of experiment and enthusiasm thankfully wins out over evaluation as such. Now I need to point out in a calm and reasonable tone that this scripting is necessary because criticism as such never helps, never creates a better culture, whereas writing about can be generous, though the press release has made us fear this mode. And where the layers of respect happen by virtue of across-the-board understanding of intentions and thought, and from which new ways of being are forced to emerge. Note, this is not a retreat into parlour culture, but an extension of it, making a world out of the interior and a network that acts as a buffer of a type of purity for all of you and your leather jacket wearing people. Okay, but from my desk I know, of course, that your utopias and mine are always in peril. Threats move over your savannah through the void of art forms seen and heard, as curators dressed like Sophia Ford Coppola and Wes Anderson troll your sharecrops for your content, your young, your ponies, seeking stuff that will demonstrate to their kinfolks overseas. Everybody is overseas. Their ability to navigate by the newer stars in order to locate newer shocks to the system, to hole punch the artistic sublimes, necessary to keep their system beating in march with the circulation of their programs and entertainment pages. And so these sublimes must naturally be stadium-sized art forms squished into shoeboxes, such that the energy contained is amplified by virtue of the squish and its force being doubly evident then for those who wish to take ownership and stewardship over its energy and its spiralling, era-defining anxiety. This being a transfer of particles as much as anything else, let it be known that ARIs that cannot play to this, that cannot deliver at the level of increased extremity required to nudge giants who are so tolerant of surprise and stimulation and who expect it awake, are doomed to fail such curators and the regimes of tolerance they dress for. While I'm on this topic, we can, I think, just go ahead and ditto this for mainstream critics with the proviso hardly necessary to point out that we actually don't have any right here, our shady distance from head office leaving ARI folk strangely at the mercy of the drifting curatorial classes. And these operational realities are determined to traverse the function of ARIs, not just to provide space, but to provide because, okay, I've written some sentences that don't quite make sense here, so because there's no real kind of link, I'm just going to skip to the next one that does. So just imagine some words and they make sense and they coherently connect. Of course, and you know this, your new day is a thing we used to call the avant-garde, but now exists as the possibility that there is always more culture and that it comes from youth with coding skills and ability to match beats with sawtooth ways. Of course, this is not so much about art but ways of being. The avant-garde you have replaced requires a position about living. Yes, in the past, again, this would have been expressed in the language of criticism, kind of summing up the way of being that an ARI represents. But this was not actually criticism, but more and more thrillingly, modes of arguing for and against in order to clear space for the new today your mode of living stands for. It was defined by the notion of the advocate, and artists and writers would all find ways to broadcast by way of demonstration. And in this way, it was totally cool because back then we were not curators, but called ourselves exhibition organisers, a grand and wonderful phrase. And in this role, we were above all demonstrators, teachers, if you will, pamphleters, most certainly. And as a side note, and I think as you all know, and just to remind ourselves though, only from 1967 has there been a human called a curator, whose task it has been to somehow provide ongoing evidence of new todays. Now, I pity these people. Their task is increasingly burdensome and no doubt null and void. Indeed, I think that you, like I, have just lived through the last gasp of this curatorial culture, the endless sweep of thematic shows whose intentions are less generous, and more related to the spectacularizingly self-conscious theatre of choosing that operates without love, without force, without candour, tilling merely to keep the signal of tilling going. As part of all of this in all, your job as ARI people was, and maybe still is, to provide a new tale or syntheses prior to mediation. Now, random thought, the artist part is also fundamental to the idea of what you can give the curatorial class. And for the love of God, please take this as advice. Do not underestimate the power of your artistry. In institutions around the world, these are the phrases that echo with deafening loudness. Well, the artist wants it. The artist says it must be this way. Hang on, I'll ask the artist. You think I'm joking, I'm not. Despite decades of post-structuralism, the artist's intention remains unviolated as the sine qua non of any endeavour in our field. We are dying to take you into our arms and have you direct our labour. And this is why any serious curator knows their job is eventually one of mere diplomacy, ensuring the artist is happy while mediating the inevitable disappointments of lack of resourcing, staffing, lumens, silly putty, marketing budget, and halogen framers. Our thing, and the thing that makes us happy, though why, is that we can make ourselves believe, this is us curators, that we were firster than first in finding you and administrating your initiatives, and as such be more open to your truths than anyone else, to the extent that it was totally likely to, in fact, already lived your ideals with you, hobo style, somewhere on top of a moving train, and maybe we even gave birth to you. Anyways, we the curatorial classes know you do not respect us because you see through us, and truly how exhausting is our task here. Utterly exhausting, that's how exhausting. Segue, and even if you don't know our secret, we know your secret, that your new todays are also todays that are above all instances of Nietzschean rebellion. This is, they are not just rebellions for rebellion's sake, but for the power of vertical extension. This is, and so therein, the dilemma of moving up or transforming. It's your dream to make change, to not assimilate, and it is our job to assimilate and to make change that demands more subsequent assimilation. Okay, little text break. News just in. This from Paige K. Bradley in Art Forum Online this week about the recent opening night of the new museum's Triennale curated by Ryan Tricarton and Lauren Cornell. I quote, "Funny how institutions so reliably structure programming around fantasies of escape and rebellion. Everybody already in wants a way out, and everybody on the outskirts wants a way in. And judging by the nearly 4,000 people who crowded the museum's galleries that night, it would seem the hastiest escape is toward a centre all dressed up in the margins of mohair and slitted clothes," end of quote. And back to business. Indeed, deep down you know that there can be no through line that keeps your purity intact. And as if to example this, no band or Castilla has ever moved to a big label and kept their credibility, and this is why your end point is so difficult. To leave home, move to a big college town, to drift to some New York, a gallery with a desk girl, head to Toad and Swamp Detico Summer. This is not selling out, and this is not what we claim, but again an instance of the Nietzschean thing that Peter Sloterdijk has called the verticality of practicing on our planet. In this, the dreams of the leftists and the Democrats run alongside the idea of verticality seen in all fields, and indeed the very fact of making a field means that there must be some vertical structure to render it visible again against other planes. Thus, to demonstrate the move up and out, even if it is against your so-called ideals and self-beliefs, is simply to play out the problematic of the late Renaissance we all live in now. This is not generalised, but the artist side of aridom makes the space possible for the amplification of artist power when it is called upon and when it presents itself in the form of its precise, explosive resonance. Or hell, maybe everyone's just got to keep moving. And I should say I'm only on page 40 of the Sloterdijk book, so I don't know what happens after that. And anyway, so it's all very simple. We live in a discourse of tension between horizontality and verticality. And in this, the only challenge you face at all, and the only way forward at all, is to make them sync. So look around you. The year is 1899, the old century is over, and ARI is dead. And the new one starts in 1901, 1 year too late, and ARI lives, and this is your fate. To live in those missing years. And anyway, that's what John Ashbery would say, or at least how he'd say it. Thank you.